There's a strange, heavy kind of silence that haunts the digital age. We live in a world where almost everything is put on display. Birthdays, coffee cups, crying eyes, and forced smiles dressed up in filters. Yet, some people choose to stay completely invisible. They scroll quietly, they observe deeply, but they never, ever post. You probably know someone like that. Or maybe you are that exact person, staring at a screen in the dark, feeling completely detached from the noise. It makes you wonder, why stay unseen when the whole world is screaming for attention? It's easy to assume they're just shy or introverted, but that's a lie. Beneath the surface, there is a much deeper psychology at play, a quiet, desperate rebellion against a culture that demands we turn our lives into content. Social media has twisted how we define our own worth. It praises the noise. It rewards the performance. But those who stay in the shadows are often the ones who see everything clearly. They watch without needing to interrupt. They think before they react. Psychologists have found that people who refrain from posting score much higher on traits like self-restraint and emotional independence. They aren't trying to prove who they are. They're just trying to survive it. In a world drowning in digital auditions, that silence is incredibly rare. Let's be honest. Most of what we post isn't communication. It's an unconscious plea for belonging. Every caption, every picture, every status update says, "Please look at me. Do I matter yet?" But when you stop posting, a heavy weight shifts. You stop thinking in captions. You start breathing again. You begin to experience life for yourself instead of for a lens. That's the hidden psychology of the silent scroller. They crave authenticity in a space where everything feels staged. They don't hate technology. They just can't find their soul in it anymore. It's about refusing to reduce your existence into a highlight reel. When you realize how easy it is to fake a life, you start valuing what can't be posted, the raw, imperfect truth. For many, this silence comes after a brutal, emotional burnout. They used to share everything, until one day, the throat went dry. The smile felt too forced. They realized that every beautiful moment came with an invisible pressure to perform, so they just quit. No announcement, just a slow, quiet disappearance from the feed. But not posting doesn't mean you don't feel. It usually means you care too much. There's a psychological concept called ownership, the feeling that a memory belongs deeply to you. The second you post it, that sacred boundary shatters. It becomes shared property, open to judgment, misinterpretation, and mockery. People who don't post are guarding their lives from the crowd. They keep their private moments untouchable and pure, and that isn't sadness. It's a quiet kind of freedom. Think about it. When was the last time you achieved something and didn't immediately feel the urge to display it? That reflex isn't natural, it's conditioned. We've been trained by a decade of dopamine loops to equate validation with value. Stepping outside that system feels terrifying, like you're erasing yourself. But it's also where healing begins. You rediscover the simplicity of doing things just for you, cooking without photographing it, traveling without tagging it, bleeding without explaining it. In that stillness, a new kind of self-awareness wakes up, one that doesn't need an audience to exist. Of course, not everyone stays quiet because they are at peace. Some are driven by a paralyzing fear of judgment. Social media has created a constant, ambient anxiety, the exhausting feeling of being watched, even when you are completely alone. They worry their words will be misread or completely ignored, so they retreat. They want to be seen, God. They want to be seen, but only truly, not superficially. The quietest people online always have the loudest minds. They aren't absent. They are overflowing. Choosing invisibility is a way of saying, I exist beyond your perception. They scroll through other people's lives, nodding, smiling, sometimes aching inside. But they stay hidden because they understand a painful truth. Not everything you experience is meant to be witnessed. The most profound transformations, the deepest grief, the hardest growth, happen unseen. Being unposted doesn't mean you are insignificant. This is the ultimate paradox. Social media promised connection, but it left an entire generation feeling completely isolated. When you stop chasing digital applause, you start rebuilding real closeness. You find out who actually checks in on you when there are no status updates to remind them. That connection feels warmer, heavier, infinitely more real. You learn to find comfort in the unshared moment. You build a sense of identity security, knowing who you are even when the room is dark and nobody is watching. That's not arrogance, it's peace. Ironically, the people who never post often have the most breathtaking stories to tell. But they save them for when you're sitting across the table, watching their eyes meet yours, sharing a silence that doesn't need witnesses. They don't need the world to clap for them. They just want to live. In a society desperate for attention, their silence is a mirror. It reminds us that the most human thing you can do is to keep something entirely for yourself. The longer you stay detached from the feed, the more the world changes. Colors look richer, time feels slower, conversations carry weight. Stepping away from the noise makes reality real again. You aren't calculating angles or chasing lighting. You are just there, fully alive inside your own skin. Our brains are addicted to the digital echo of approval. Resisting that loop takes an immense, quiet discipline. It requires a strong internal locus of control, meaning your happiness comes from within, not from a notification. Studies prove that walking away from the performance drastically increases emotional stability. Your identity becomes solid, no longer edited into something digestible for the masses, but lived in all its messy, unfiltered complexity. But let's be honest, online silence can also hide absolute exhaustion. It's the fatigue of watching everyone else's highlight reels while you're drowning behind the scenes. You compare, you doubt, you question your own value. Eventually, you step away for self-preservation. You realize you don't owe the world a performance or an explanation for your absence. We have confused visibility with value. We assume that to matter, we must be noticed, but real meaning doesn't need witnesses. The moments that truly shape who you are will happen when no one is looking. Privacy isn't loneliness, it's intimacy with your own soul. When the broadcasting stops, you finally hear your own voice again, your quiet desires, your unspoken fears. It's a homecoming, but it's not always peaceful. There will be nights of deep self-doubt, wondering if your silence has made you irrelevant, if you're falling behind while everyone else simulates progress. But your worth doesn't vanish when the screen goes dark. It's still there, steady, like the hum of a quiet room after a massive storm. That is what real confidence looks like, the calm assurance of self offline. People ask, if you didn't post it, did it even happen? But the truth is, the things that change you permanently rarely make it to the feed. Your private victories, your quiet heartbreaks, your silent acts of kindness, they live in your chest, not in the media. Authenticity is the alignment between who you are inside and what you show the world. But filters distort that truth, forcing you to live as a curated version of yourself. Staying quiet is a way to protect that fragile inner world. You don't need 1,000 strangers to double-tap your pain to know it hurts. You don't need to capture the sunset to remember the warmth on your face. Those who live quietly feel life most intensely. They absorb the micro details others miss, the heavy pause before someone speaks, the shifting light on a cold wall. They possess presence, the rarest currency in an attention economy. Sometimes that presence makes them look cold or detached to outsiders. But their silence isn't emptiness. It's depth. It's the relief of no longer needing to explain yourself to the crowd. Not every truth belongs to the collective. Some parts of you deserve to remain completely untouched by algorithms and opinions. Once a memory is public, it belongs to interpretation. It belongs to the trend. It stops being yours. The next time you see that friend who never posts, don't assume they are hiding or lonely. Maybe they are just living. Maybe they found peace in the quiet corners of existence, far away from the blue glow of a screen. They remembered what the rest of us forgot. Being unseen isn't being alone. Being quiet isn't being empty. And sometimes, the truest expression of who you are is silence. We aren't meant to be performances. We are meant to be people. And the people who don't post, they remind us of that every single day, beautifully invisible,